This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. I am Dr. Duke, and I am joined today by Alex Newman. Alex, as always, good to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thank you, Duke.
Just when you think the universities can't base themselves anymore, we see these latest stories. I mean, I think that, sunlight is a great disinfectant. Now that I think even people on the Democrat side are seeing how radical our college kids are, how completely, for the group of people that claims, these college kids, that they're the most empathetic, they care about justice and social justice, they care about women's rights and geriatric rights. To see these kids side with butchers and murderers in Hamas is probably a good thing that we flush this out now, because I think there are some sober people in the Democrat Party who are also recognizing this evil. I want to show you a video about how a pro-Palestinian student basically takes over a advanced math class at MIT. And what's really galling about this, Alex, is the fact that the professor basically gives up teaching math so a student can push his politics. Take a look.
Be prime, and you find the formula. Yeah, go ahead.
As we witness the ongoing genocide of Gaza and MIT silence, I'm joining hundreds of students citywide in walking out of class to Lobby Center, because we stand for the liberation of Palestine against the active genocide perpetuated by MIT, Israel, and the United States. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
So this student is allowed by the professor to stand up on classroom time that is being paid for by all these kids and say that basically MIT, the United States of America, and Israel are engaged in genocide, and then to wave a non-American flag in the classroom. I mean, first of all, shouldn't the professor pay a price for allowing his class to be hijacked that way?
Dude, can you imagine what would have happened if this professor had intervened? He would have been a racist, colonialist, white supremacist, Nazi who wants to participate in genocide, who doesn't understand his white privilege, who needs to be strung up immediately. You can't intervene when oppressed marginalized communities are speaking out about injustice. This is how absurd this has become, Duke. And you mentioned that the other students are paying for this. Yes, many of them are. You know who else is paying for this is you and I. Right? We pay taxes to fund this kind of madness through all the grants and the student loans, and we're writing all those off. Now, taxpayers are subsidizing this idiocy. And I said it in my story last week or a couple of weeks ago, when this academic philosopher was arguing that government should start licensing parents to if they want to raise their own children. We have got to stop the subsidies for insanity. If we don't, this insanity is going to continue metastasizing, and it's eventually going to kill the patient.
And as in the public school system, right? Why would the radicals in the public schools stop doing what they're doing? Every year they get more money from the state legislatures. Even in red states, they get more money. They get rewarded handsomely for failing to teach our kids how to read and write and politicizing them. All that radical sex that you and I have talked about in the classroom, all the critical race theory. Not a single teacher really has lost their job. They get more money every year. Their retirement benefits far outstrip lowly college professors like me. If I had spent half as much time in graduate school and entered a public school, by now I'd be 10 times richer than I am. That's just the reality. And so, and same at the college level. Even Donald Trump, he made a lot of fanfare about how when he was president, he said, now, if you don't defend free speech, free worldview on college campuses, we're going to cut funds for you. Meanwhile, the public universities continue to do what they do. And as far as I know, there was not a single dollar withheld by the federal government. So is there any force? How do we, Alex, how do we cut off the funds when the politicians have no will to do so?
Yeah, and a big problem here also is the unions and the special interest groups, right? And this applies just as much to the K through 12 system, if not more. You've got teachers' unions that are largely dominating the political process now. They're some of the biggest spenders in our elections. They have a vested interest in perpetuating this. And so, it's going to have to come to a point where taxpayers are going to say enough is enough. We're not willing to do this. And this has been an ongoing debate, right? Joe Biden has been trying to wipe away all the student debt so that plumbers and electricians and truck drivers and janitors can pay the student loans from a bunch of imbeciles who spent 4 years drinking themselves half retarded during college. It's ridiculous, and I think we're getting rapidly to that point. If you look at the polling, whether it be K through 12 or academia, Americans are sick of this stuff. The question is, which is going to come first? Society is going to self-destruct from all this madness coming out of our college campuses, or the remaining people with any sense are going to say, we're not putting up with this anymore. If you want to be an idiot, you got to find a productive way to make a living.
Well, this video was released by billionaire hedge fund manager Bill Ackman, who's already pulled out his millions, refuses anymore to donate to some of these Ivy League schools to whom he's given a lot of money because of their radical indifference to the plight of Israel and the anti-Semitism that is rife throughout this situation. Here's actually a post from Bill Ackman. Again, he's a billionaire hedge fund manager. This is a math class this morning at MIT. This is the state of learning and free speech at our top universities. It would not be happening without failure of leadership at MIT. Imagine being a student who borrowed $250,000 to attend MIT, or a professor who is trying to do research in this environment. I go one step further. It's not just the administration of MIT. It's that professor. I get what you said. Yeah, absolutely, he would be targeted by the radical students and perhaps even punished by the administrators. But you cannot let somebody hijack your classroom, because the professor is not just responsible for his lectures. He's responsible for the education and the time that the education is set aside for to give kids math. And this teacher was standing there. The protester got up and stood there with his flag while this complicated formula is being worked through on the blackboard. He actually has to tell the protester at one point, let me finish this proof first. Right? So literally the student believes he has the authority in the classroom, not the teacher. And here's let me read you just so we have it, because the audio wasn't the best. Here's what the young man said. As you witness an ongoing genocide of Gaza in MIT silence, I'm joining hundreds of students citywide walking out of class. Because we stand for the liberation of Palestine against active genocide that is perpetuated by MIT, Israel, and United States. Now, again, no comment whatsoever about the little girls raped and the old women raped and the people burnt down in their houses. None of that. No. That's not genocide. See, that's resistance. That's decolonization. And so you have worth pointing out, a white male professor trying to teach math, and gutless, absolutely gutless. Can you imagine what also would have had if because if that happened to me as a professor and somebody forced their opinion in, I would then say I am obligated as the professor to point out that the side of Israel, right? You're going to have to be, you can't have one kind of dialectic at the expense of others. And that would have been even worse, right? Countering that with the other side of the argument. And this is, again, math class of all things.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane, Duke. And don't get me wrong. Obviously, this professor had an obligation to step in and put a lid on this madness. But I have some sympathy for professors who are scared. You're dealing now with students who've been incredibly radicalized. I was reading yesterday, a lot of these students that are leading these pro-Hamas demonstrations, they're here on guest visas. A lot of them are coming from the Middle East. I mean, you don't know exactly what you're dealing with. And so, of course, professors and, of course, colleges have an obligation to deal with this kind of stuff, but they have created a monster now, and I think some of them are actually scared for their own lives. They don't know what to do with this monster that they've created. I saw a Hamas demonstration march into Black Rock the other day. I must admit I had a little bit of schadenfreude there, but really the monster that these maniacs have unleashed on us is now coming back to eat its creators. This is not going to end well. I guarantee it. This is not going to end well for anyone.
Yeah, this is a Frankenstein situation. The radical administrators and professors pale in radicalness compared to the kids they've turned into monsters. And we've got some interesting comments from different cultural critics. James Lindsay says about this story, quote, "Stop hiring college graduates. Can you imagine hiring people who were professionally trained in an environment like this? What a blank show. Save yourself the trouble. Stop hiring graduate kids." And then college professor Wilfred Riley said, "To me, the most striking contrast here is between the teacher clearly outlining an important equation and the radical student babbling out low IQ partisan nonsense. We often hear that the second is the most important thing, but that is facially false." And how about Ann Coulter? Quote, "Not saying we should criminalize the donation of money to woke colleges and universities. That would be extreme. But we need a moratorium of several hundred years before we allow people to donate again." And that makes a lot of sense, too.
It does. And, to James Lindsay's point, I couldn't agree more. I would not, unless I had evidence that this was an exceptional, unique individual who was able to withstand the insane brainwashing taking place on these college campuses, I would not hire a college graduate. In fact, a young man that I hired recently who's extraordinary doesn't have a college degree. And for me, that was a benefit. He's been amazing. And so I will not hire college graduates. And I don't think you really need a college degree for most of the things that people do today. Yeah, if you want to get a medical license, if you want to be a lawyer or even an engineer, you're probably going to have to do some college. But the vast majority of the jobs that people are getting college degrees for, totally unnecessary. I mean, the same is true in journalism. I got a bachelor in journalism degree. What did I learn there? Not a whole lot, right? I could have learned much more on my own. In fact, I learned more in some weekend-long conferences than I did at university. It really is much more an indoctrination program than it is today an effort to provide an education. And obviously there are exceptions, and it's not applicable to every degree in every university. There are still some decent universities. There are still plenty of good professors such as yourself, Duke. But generally speaking, as a general rule, the children, overgrown children who may have reached the age of maturity, but clearly not in their heads, coming out of these college campuses are worse than useless. They will be a liability for your organization. You'll have to walk on eggshells so you don't do a microaggression and cause them to cry and, go file a lawsuit. I mean, avoid these people like the plague.
Well, one more quote from an analyst before we go to break. This is James A. Gagliano. Quote, "We've allowed adolescent clowns, most of whom have zero concept of history or geopolitics, to hijack learning environments. Instead of removing the disruptive student and suspending him, the professor has to patiently allow him to be an activist in class." What an absolute disgrace. After the break, we're going to give you more evidence of how completely spiraling out of control our universities are. Back again with Alex Newman, and we're talking about just how, if there's a silver lining in a very, very series of dark clouds about what's happened in Israel, it is certainly the fact that this situation has flushed out the verminous behavior of our college kids. At colleges, small and large, university and small liberal arts colleges, the same one-sided, mindless invective that you're getting from college students. I mean, what stuns me as a professor myself is how ahistorical this all is. I mean, you and I have talked for years about we were going to pay a price for not teaching kids actual history, the real history of war, the real history of the struggle for liberation and freedom and individual civil rights. By not doing that, convincing kids, showing kids evil when evil comes from the left, that whether that's National Socialism or communism or socialism, by cherry coding left-wing monsters and genocides and blaming exclusively the political right for all the evil in the world, has created kids who claim to be smart and educated and empathetic but they have no ability to see the contradictions in their own arguments. We have many students now on college campuses leading anti-Semitic hate events on those campuses, and they are not U.S. citizens. Here's another problem. Many of the leaders of these organizations are overseas kids who are come to America to get a, quote, better education, unquote, to take advantage of liberty and freedom and tolerance and plurality.
Yeah, I think we have a real problem with this whole foreign students thing. And, I'm not against foreign students. I've been overseas almost my entire life. I've lived on 4 different continents, 8 different countries. I've been to probably 100 countries. I have nothing against foreign students. But we do have a major problem here when it comes to foreign students. We are importing jihadists. We are importing communists. We are importing actual spies, right? A lot of people don't want to talk about this, but many of the Chinese nationals here on student visas, some of the professors, some of the people working at our defense contractors are here spying for our top geopolitical adversary. They're working in some of our most sensitive university laboratories. They're taking technology and know-how back with them when they go to China. This is insane. No sensible, legitimate country would ever give a top-notch technical education or top-notch technical know-how that Americans invested billions to develop, research, create, etc., to a geopolitical adversary. And yet that's exactly what we are doing here. Then you import all these foreign conflicts. And you see this all over the streets of Europe now, right? I lived years in Sweden. You've got like street battles between Turks and Kurds, and like, what in the world are we doing here? This is simply crazy. If somebody wants to come here and pay the bill for a legitimate college education and not stir up trouble, not try to spy on us, not try to recruit terrorists, that's one thing. But if they want to come over here and make trouble, we have a big problem. And thankfully, Florida's cracking down on this, but a lot of other states have a long way to go.
Can you imagine, Alex, if people were seeking to get degrees in China in math and science, foreign students, and they started agitating in a pro-democracy way? Can you imagine how the Chinese would handle that? I mean, there would be absolute zero tolerance. There would be hell to pay for that. So only in the stupid West that we invite people who hate us in. We reward them with an education, oftentimes with student aid and all kinds of grants and scholarships for them to hate us. We just did a story about MIT about how a student took over a math class. And here's the president talking about protests at MIT. Her name is Sally Kornbluth. She issued a warning after Jewish and Israeli students said that they were scared for their physical safety and were prevented from going to class by an anti-Semitic event, which started on Thursday morning and was held in a highly very busy area. Kornbluth said that the faculty had serious concerns that violence could erupt after counter-protests showed up with their opinion. So notice what the point is. When the pro-Israel side tried to protest back, that's when MIT got concerned. It's not violence when pro-Palestinian kids and agitators are bullying Jewish kids on the way to class. It only becomes dangerous, says the faculty, when the pro-Israeli side tries to give its worldview.
Yeah. And I think there's a very real sense here, Duke, that a lot of people are missing, and that a lot of these revolutionaries want to stir up conflict and division for the sake of conflict and division. Marx was really one of the few things he understood really well. He certainly didn't understand economics very well, but one of the things that he understood very, very well is that conflict can be a means for advancing your objectives, your objective for burning down civilization and rebuilding tyranny from the ashes. And I think there is a very real effort to radicalize, divide, spread hatred among young people. And actually, the poisonous ideology that is being pushed into the minds of young people, foreigners who are coming here and domestic students, this has implications, broadly speaking, right? And you see this happening in Europe as well, where they're bringing in foreigners. They're teaching them that the country they have come to is this evil, terrible, white supremacist, colonialist, capitalist, exploiter, whatever, and that it needs to be dismantled. And a lot of these, young kids who are coming from other countries, they don't know any better. That's what they're learning at the university. The Babylon Bee did a great parody on this, that Kim Jong-un was just astounded at how effective and how great the propaganda from the Ivy League university universities was the anti-American propaganda, and that he was taking lessons. And of course, that was a joke. It was a parody. But the reason it was funny is because there's a very real element of truth to it. American universities are pumping out anti-American activists, and many of the same arguments that they use to demonize and hate America are just as applicable to the state of Israel. And so none of this should be surprising, but all of it should be very alarming.
This is going to blow you away. This statistic is unbelievable, and it's unacceptable. At MIT, one of the primary math and science colleges in the country, one third, almost 35% of the student body is foreign nationals who have U.S. visa. It is unbelievable. You're telling me in a country of 350 million people that one third of MIT must be foreign students, from many of them from countries who hate everything about us. And we got another story. Flip to the next story, Mike. This is another one. UCLA students say anti-Semitic things out loud, threaten people. They hit Netanyahu piñatas on campus while saying, quote, "beat that effing Jew." Take a look at the video. Beat that effing Jew. And this is on a college campus in Los Angeles. I hate to play the what about, but my God, if that was a picture of an African-American, anybody that kids were doing that to, can you imagine how quickly the university would investigate and expel and condemn and have mandatory sensitivity training? Yeah, but when you're doing it to a white Jewish man, no, that's just that's legitimate protest, Alex.
Yeah. Imagine if it was a image of Xi Jinping or Winnie the Pooh, and they were punching, and then using racial slurs about Chinese. Oh boy, we wouldn't hear the end of it forever. But folks, this all should show you that we have a real crisis on our hands here. And this is actually an existential crisis. These maniacs on our college campuses who don't know anything useful and whose heads are filled with anti-American, anti-freedom, anti-God propaganda, they think they're going to be the future leaders of our companies, of our governments. This is not going to end well.
Yeah, and again, universities, they specialize in intolerance now. I told this to my university kids yesterday, that you're being lied to about history. You are being given a false sense of what's true and false. You are being told not to consider ideas that challenge the professorate's ideas. You have to follow what we do. And what you're seeing there, as you said a moment ago, this is not a bug, it's a feature. This is what the entire structure of the universities has been doing for 30, 40 years. Absolutely antagonistic to any kind of general critical thinking. It's all completely ideologically driven. Universities are places of agitprop and indoctrination. They have nothing to do with education.
That's right. It's very unfortunate, and I hope parents who are watching will pay attention. There are many things that your children could do that don't involve borrowing $100,000 or $200,000 from the government to have your child's brains turned into mush, and so I hope you will consider those very carefully going forward.
Yeah, we got to come up with better solutions to this. And the only thing that's going to fix the universities, and that's starting to happen, if so few kids go, that they have to change. It's already the branch campuses, the smaller colleges are already feeling this. Until we get the MITs and the UW-Madisons and the UC Berkeleys to suffer that way too, probably not going to change. And that's going to wrap up the show. If you enjoy the program, please subscribe to our podcast channel. Simply search for Dr. Duke Show on your favorite free platform. And don't forget to follow us on Rumble. Visit rumble.com/freedomproject. For all of us here and for Alex Newman, we will talk to you again very soon.